Good morning and welcome to this Euractiv online event, which is kindly supported by ENNOH, the European Network of Gas Transmission System Operators. My name is Frédéric Simon, I'm the Energy and Environment Editor of Euractiv, and I will be your host for today's event, which is titled Ensuring the Effective Integration of Hydrogen within the EU's Energy System. Now, today's discussion on hydrogen comes amid a push by the European Union to cut greenhouse gas emissions by 55% before 2030, before eventually reaching net zero by 2050. And hydrogen is expected to play an important role here by building bridges between the gas and electricity sector and also helping to decarbonize areas like transport and industry. So where do we stand when it comes to creating a hydrogen market in Europe today? To discuss this topic, I have the pleasure of welcoming Katerina Sikov-Magny, Director for the Green Transition and Energy System Integration at the European Commission's Energy Directorate, Jerzy Buzek, former Polish Prime Minister and currently with the centre-right EPP group in the European Parliament, Rafaela Noto from E3G, a climate policy think tank, Alan Cruz from ENNOH, the European Association of Electricity Transmission System Operators, and Piotr Krus, General Director of ENNOH. Welcome to all of you, and thanks for joining us today. We'll start this virtual conference with a series of short opening statements from the speakers, and then we'll move on to a Q&A discussion that will also include questions from the audience. To put a question to the speakers, just use the chat function on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will take questions directly from there. So I think that's all for me. So without further ado, let me give the floor to Katerina Sikov-Magny from the European Commission.
Good morning. Many thanks, Frédéric, and good morning, everybody. Very pleased to be here today. So just to go directly into the topic of today, I'm referring to the major package that the Commission adopted in December on how to bring about the hydrogen and green gases future, or low carbon gases future, into the Europe in order to meet the ambitious climate targets that we have set. But before saying a little bit more on the package itself, I would like to put it into the broader context. And the broader context is the so-called Fit for 55 package that the Commission adopted last July, which is groundbreaking in terms of its size and coverage, and its purpose is to make the European Green Deal reality. So it covers many aspects, I think about 12 proposals all in all, ranging from energy efficiency to more renewables, to alternative fuels, energy taxation, carbon border adjustment, emission trading system extension, and many more. So this package from December that focuses on hydrogen and clean gases is a complementary package to the Fit for 55 package. And its aim is to make the Union less dependent on fossil fuel imports, fossil fuel usage, and make our system more resilient. There are 5 policy goals. I will go through them very rapidly, and I'm sure we will come back to those in the discussion. So first, to create an effective cross-border hydrogen infrastructure and a competitive hydrogen market. Here, we have, of course, looked at how electricity and gas markets work and taken up many of the principles therefrom, like third-party access tariff regulation, separation of production and transport activities. But we also acknowledge that hydrogen is an emerging market, and a lot of flexibility has been provided until 2030 for the ramp-up phase. Second, the package also aims to integrate more renewable and low-carbon gases into the existing gas grid by removing, among others, tariffs for cross-border interconnections for these gases. Third, the package provides for more integrated network planning between electricity, gas and hydrogen networks and puts in place the structures for ensuring the cooperation between the sectors and bringing about the future hydrogen network, and based on sector integration, of course. Fourth, the package aims at ensuring the transition to cleaner energy, that it is fair and just, so bringing consumer rights similar to the electricity sector that we already have in place also into the gases sector. And fifth and last but not least, the package also proposes measures to improve the resilience of the EU energy system and security of energy supply, which is particularly topical in today's situation that we see happening. To conclude my introductory remarks, we need to keep in mind that this December package, on which our discussion will focus today, I think, does not promise to deliver the decarbonization of gases by itself. That's where we need to look at the Fit for 55 package in its entirety. That's the aim of the packages put together. Thank you, and look forward to a very interesting discussion.
Thanks, Mrs. Sivkov-Magny, for setting the scene. I think we can now turn to Jerzy Buzek. We're still, I think, adjusting his camera. There he is. Jerzy Buzek, can you hear us?
Well, probably yes. For me, something very strange with my contact, absolutely unusual. I have to turn around my my computer, so it's something unusual for me, because it's necessary for me to keep it. You see, maybe, okay. I hope it will be okay. Well, thank you very much, first of all, for invitation. I'm very glad being with you and very happy to contribute to today's event. As far as I know, we have 2 minutes for opening remarks. Am I right? And in European Parliament, we've got usually 1 minute, so I'm in a very good position, I must tell you. 3 short messages. If we are serious about EU's ambitions, 2030, 2050 especially, climate targets, as well as about just transition, all electric scenario is not an option. In many sectors, energy-intensive industries, for example, steel, chemical, transport, heavy-duty vehicles, marine, aviation, in some cases, heating in my country so important, electrification will not be economically or even technically viable. And that's where clean hydrogen comes in. So it is important that what we discuss here is not if, but rather how to effectively integrate hydrogen within our energy system in the future. Second, very important when planning the future, it's always worth remembering about the past, the more distant and recent one. More distant is, of course, the beginning with hydrogen. It was a Ditford book, you probably know such a book, and less distant past our recent achievements, including the third energy package and creation of ENNOH and ENNOH, developing hydrogen economy. Let's first and foremost use the experience and potential existing processes as well as infrastructure synergies in the linking gas and electricity system. And point number 3, hydrogen may become one of the major energy carriers of the 21st century. To make this happen, we need a clear regulatory framework to support technologies deployment, but also to ensure security of supply, market functioning, and last but not least, to avoid monopolies. Even if monopolistic will be sending hydrogen, like sending gas or sending electricity, in general, we should have an open market in the European Union. And this is something that we, as a European Parliament, will look closely at during our work. on the new gas package, so important for all of us. We are waiting for that to work hard with you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Buzik. Let me turn now to Raphaël Anoto from E3G.
Thank you, Frederic. When we talk about the future of the hydrogen network and the gas network in general, it seems like we have a lot of things that we do not know, and that actually planning for the future is very hard to actually know what the future is made of. But there are some things that we know. And first of all, the pathway in terms of what we do with our fossil gas consumption. This pathway is very clear. When we look at the European Commission's climate law impact assessment, we know that we need to reduce our fossil gas consumption by over 30% by 2030 and around 96% by 2050, so almost eliminate it all. What it means is that also when we talk about the orderly transition and transformation of the gas sector and the development of the hydrogen sector, we know that a lot of the current assets that are existing right now will have to be downsized, phased out, or decommissioned. The second thing that I want to say is that parallel to reaching the 2030 and 2050 targets, we need to ensure that consumers that are actually using these networks can choose not to stay on the gas system or not to be forced to switch to hydrogen, and that they are not penalized when it's not possible for them, and limit as much as possible the excess cost from that. The truth is that we haven't answered yet whether we need a pan-European hydrogen infrastructure at all or not. So developing a hydrogen infrastructure needs to be tailored to the real hydrogen demand in Europe, but also the volumes that are available, and that what is needed so far is a balance, but this balance is not really there yet in the package. We need very quickly the right safeguards to ensure that the network development plans and the development of hydrogen are in line with our climate targets. We need a governance system that is based on independence on the advisory board for climate, for example, that was introduced in the TENI to really increase the independence of decision making and ensure that we are not overbuilding infrastructure, because this will be paid for by consumers in the end. And this has to happen both at EU level and at national level. Just to finish, the Vice President Timmermans announced that every Commission proposal would be subject to a climate test from the 1st of December to evaluate a bit the coherence of legislation with carbon neutrality objective and with the 55% reduction. At the moment, we do not really see these rules applying to the gas package, and we're not really seeing it fit for 55, although it's part of this package. So we need more clarity also on how the pathway given by this package actually aligns with climate legislation. Thank you.
Thanks, Raphaël Anoto. Let me turn now to Anand Kroes from ENSOE.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me. And from ENSOE, let's say, if we want to achieve our European climate neutrality goals, we at ENSOE strongly believe that this is only possible in a well-integrated energy system that links different sectors and harnesses the synergy between electricity, gas, hydrogen, transportation, industry, among others. So the guiding principle on this should also be a balance between sustainability, affordability, and security supply. It's also therefore that I support Jersey's remark that it's not going to be all electric, but to enable a smarter and a more integrated, optimized one energy system view, we think it requires an appropriate regulatory framework for all elements, constitutes electric system, including also the other energy carriers, such as hydrogen. A level playing field for the different energy carriers is therefore important to compete and support this coordinated decarbonization, as well as the energy efficiency first principle. So given from ENSOE's perspective that the primary energy source in the future will be electrons from solar and wind generation mainly, direct electrification, in our view, should be prioritized as the most energy efficient solution. But molecules such as hydrogen can and should support decarbonization where direct electrification is technically not viable or cost effective. From an energy system perspective, hydrogen can further play a very important role as a long-term storage solution, contributing to adequacy and security supply. So this is indeed a very important part why we also are very much engaged in working together and make the energy system work. We think in this part that we shouldn't forget also the other sectors. So not only electricity and hydrogen, but we should also focus on the other energy carriers like heat and the way that, for example, electric vehicles can play a role with the batteries. Therefore, a multi-sectorial planning approach is needed to facilitate the most efficient solution at the system level, improving smart sector integration, enhancing flexibility across the different energy sectors, and in our opinion, the only way to ensure a timely delivery of an integrated infrastructure planning. So this approach means we need a unique system perspective or a unified system perspective, a one system view. We need the flexibility in the electrical system because it will continue to rise given we're introducing more and more renewables like solar and wind. Hydrogen is going to be definitely an important flexibility provider for the power system. And this requires structural investment and flexibility, where we think that, for example, time-stamped guarantees of origin could be a great facilitator to make it happen in a flexibility way. Coordination between hydrogen and electric network system operator is key. And the multi-sectorial planning of development of assets is also important part here. To support this integration of hydrogen into the energy system, we think that Europe indeed needs a proper regulatory framework. And it's imperative to develop the business case to use hydrogen in an electric system operation support function, which does currently not exist. So from that perspective, we're definitely looking forward in bringing hydrogen a step further, because we will need it to indeed decarbonize Europe and keeping security supply in an affordable way on the high levels that we're used to. Thank you.
Thanks, Alan Cruz. Let me turn now to Piotr Kurs from ENNOH.
Thank you very much, Frederick. Hello, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us in this very timely debate referring to the discussions we are currently concluding on the future of our European energy system. And maybe also let me start by sharing with you some of the opening remarks on behalf of ENNOH. We fully recognize the urgent need to review the existing legislation and to consider the demands of the energy transition and reaching the EU energy and climate goals. ENNOH welcomes the publication of hydrogen and gas market decarbonization package, the package that is underlying the importance of hydrogen in the future energy system. We see the integration of hydrogen into existing regulation as a matter of utmost importance for the whole European energy system. And already today, we see this great ambition to develop hydrogen economy in Europe, the ambition that is underpinned by Fit for 55, by European hydrogen strategy, but also by national strategies for hydrogen by member states. As gas TSOs, we are ready and willing to develop these strategies and support them with necessary infrastructure, the infrastructure that will enable for liquids and robust EU-wide hydrogen market. And I can already say that as ENNOH, as TSOs, we already have a long experience working with hydrogen, and that is already underpinned by a number of activities. Together with ENNOH, we have been already developing the TUI-NDP scenarios that include hydrogen supply and demand forecasts up to 2050. Then our interlink model, which we are also developing jointly with ENNOH, allows us to analyze the most efficient and economical solution for infrastructure gaps. And in our opinion, such analysis is and will be fundamental in talking about future integrated energy systems, as it was said today by previous speakers. And finally, working with our regulatory tasks on TUI-NDP and TUI-NDP for gas, we can already say that we include hydrogen and hydrogen projects for our project collection. And this year, in 2022, more than 180 projects have been received in this above categories. So actually, the work is already concluded by us to go for the hydrogen future. And ladies and gentlemen, we also believe that there is no doubt that repurposing of existing gas infrastructure for hydrogen transport is one of the most economical and efficient solutions for the development of the EU-wide hydrogen network. In addition to its affordability, repurposing provides the quickest solution for infrastructure development and therefore the best chance of timely achieving European targets and supporting the market growth, which is one of the key policy targets of current EU regulations. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Piotrkus. We can now start with the Q&A discussion. Let me start with a general question to introduce the topic to all of you. And maybe I will start with Jerzy Buzek. So do you believe the Commission's gas package that was presented in December is going to be enough to reach the EU's climate targets, or do you see gaps there that need to be filled? Jerzy Buzek, your views on that, please.
It's absolutely crucial, the gas package now in the European Parliament. We treat it very seriously, and we think that, as a matter of fact, hydrogen is the only option to effectively decarbonize many sectors. Electrification will certainly increase beyond current levels in the EU. However, in many sectors of our economy, for both technical and economical reasons, hydrogen will remain the only solution in effective decarbonization. As already mentioned, this is about heavy industry, transport, heating, but also about electricity generation to address demand, seasonality, and or peak situation. Hydrogen provides an efficient and robust means of decreasing network congestion, for example, and providing long-term and large-scale storage for intermittent renewable energy sources. For all these reasons, hydrogen can and should be available for all sectors based on a level playing field approach. So we think that this package is absolutely crucial from the point of view of our goals of 2030, 2050. That's it.
Thanks, Mr. Buzek. Let me put the question now to Piotrkus from ENNOH. Do you see the Commission's gas package in December as sufficient to reach the EU's decarbonisation goals, or do you see gaps there that need to be addressed from a very high-level perspective?
Well, thank you very much, Frederick, for this question. Maybe reiterating my opening statements, as we said, we really welcome the package. We see that it is a very sound policy proposal that, of course, integrates low-carbon gases, integrates hydrogen into the future of our sector. It puts also a lot of important emphasis on other aspects like security of supply, because we should remember that energy transition should not be implemented with detriment to security of supply and to the market functioning. General remark we welcome is that we see that the package for future of gas and hydrogen decarbonization bases on the principles that have been implemented with the third package for the functioning of the gas market. And we believe that it really places TSOs and our sector in a very good position to take part in this future market development. Although we see in some areas that it should go more into the subjects we discussed today, so build more on this energy system integration and seeking for synergies between the various energy carriers rather than providing some of a more silo approach. But I think that in detail, there are some details, of course, from our perspective that should be also clarified for the future, but we in general take it as a very good and sound policy proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Piotr Krus, and we'll go into the detail later on about the specifics of the regulation of the hydrogen market. But let me stay for the moment with still a sort of high-level perspective. And so let me turn to Ellen Krus about your views. Same question I put to the other speakers about the gas package presented in December. Do you think it's going to be appropriate to achieve the EU's decarbonisation goals for 2030 and 2050?
Thank you. If we look at hydrogen as a gas, let's say for usage, I think the previous gas legislation is a very good, let's say, starting point. So I assume there, let's say, not being completely aware of all the gas elements, that it fits much better. So using hydrogen for backup power and electricity, I think there are definitely good elements there. Where we're still trying to investigate is whether, let's say, the new element for green hydrogen is that you're creating hydrogen out of electricity. And electricity is a very volatile product, so it always needs to be balanced on millisecond basis. And that's where we're still trying to look, does this gas package indeed give the right incentives? And that's also, for example, why I just mentioned in the opening statements, that maybe time-stamped guarantees of origin can be a helpful tool, which are not, let's say, we're not yet sure whether this is fully, let's say, helping the decarbonization. So we're investigating, but with electricity, often the devil is in the details, so we're not there yet. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen Krus. Let me put the question now to Rafael Anoto. Do you see any gaps in the Commission's December gas package?
Thank you, Frederic. Yeah, just to start by saying that, of course, the gas package is crucial to actually reach the climate targets, and also to ensure that hydrogen is used where it adds more value. So of course, there are some sectors where hydrogen is the only option, such as the heavy industry, for example. But where I would not agree with what was said previously is that in some sectors, hydrogen will not be something that is competitive. We already know that, so it should not be available everywhere. For example, we will not have the volumes to have hydrogen for heating in an affordable manner, and this is something that is crucial when we talk about the transition and reaching the climate targets. It's also to ensure that this transition is affordable and that is not affecting the most vulnerable consumers. In terms of gaps, it means that we need to also increase the robustness of the governance that is more aligned with science and with the climate targets, because this is not really the case at the moment. Alignment with the national energy and climate plans, the long-term strategies, and all of these plans that help us reach the targets. That also means that we need sound competition between electricity and hydrogen, which is also a gap that we identified in assessing the package. And lastly, this package is very important, but also other issues will be crucial, and other policy files will be crucial to actually help reducing demand in fossil fuels, such as the Renewable Energy Directive, the Energy Efficiency Directive, and the EPBD, which will also help decarbonizing heating sector, for example. And these are also very important when we talk about reaching the climate targets.
Okay, thanks, Rafael Anoto. Let me now introduce the topic. I see Jerzy Buzek has got his hand up. Do you want to make a comment, Mr. Buzek?
Yes, if I may say in very general way, that hydrogen, as a matter of fact, reconciles gas and electricity. That's very important. And hydrogen can help to decrease network congestion and provide long-term and large-scale storage for intermittent renewable energy sources. At the same time, it can be easily transported via dedicated pipeline infrastructure or injected into gas transmission infrastructure to create a methane hydrogen blend. As such, it naturally reconciles electricity and gas. So in this, let's say, competition, electricity, gas, hydrogen, in the long-term perspective, of course, hydrogen will be the most important, because we can use it as a gas, as a matter of fact, and to produce electricity. if we store hydrogen. In this context, it's crucial that electricity, gas, and hydrogen are integrated within future use energy system. And as far as I can recognize, it is proposed, as a matter of fact, in European Commission proposal. New gas power plants are increasingly being built hydrogen ready. In the future, many of these power plants will generate electricity from a blend or methane and hydrogen blend, or from pure hydrogen. As a result, the increase between gas and electricity infrastructure will increase even further. On the other hand, newly built electricity renewables will bring more intermittency and possible curtailment if consumption doesn't match production, especially in summer. Integrating the electricity renewables in the gas system via hydrogen will increase the profitability of new projects and partially address the issue of the seasonality of the energy supply and demand. And we know very well it is the most disturbing issue from the point of view of using renewables. In just even now, we've got such a high prices of gas, seasonality, our renewable energy resources in some part of Europe. So that's a really problem for us, and we can solve it thanks to hydrogen in the future.
Thanks, Mr. Buzek, for pointing to this question of seasonality, and that introduces the next question I wanted to ask, which is about the joint scenarios for electricity, gas, and hydrogen, which is part of the Commission proposal that was tabled in December. So these joint scenarios must take place and be undertaken as part of national network development plans. So let me ask you, Alan Kroes, how do you see this joint scenario exercise taking shape going forward? Will you be starting from scratch, or do you already have a basis to work on?
No, I think what Piotr also already mentioned, this is something that we are already doing. So let's say in the TYNDP cycle for 2022, we are already working on the joint scenarios together with ENNOH, but also with other sectors like power to heat to come up with a full energy scenario. And this is indeed crucial to make sure that you have the full energy both on generation side and on consumption side, to look at what are the best ways and how does it match. Because in the end, energy needs to be stored or generated somewhere to keep the balance. So a joint scenario is crucial. What I still would also like to add is this gives a first perspective, and then it becomes clear, okay, how to solve the solution, which energy carrier to pick up and go further. Because while Jerzy indeed mentioned that electricity is more expensive to transport, transportation costs are only a fraction of the total energy cost. And we're currently, let's say, kind of spoiled that there was always enough electricity and gas available. So all the industry has always been looking at a flat demand curve. And maybe in the future, their flexibility on their side can be more beneficial than trying to make sure that hydrogen fills up all the gaps. And I think that's this transformation that currently is ahead of us. And we need to relook at all the business cases, all the interfaces. And there, let's say, a common scenario definitely helps in going forward.
Thanks, Alan Kroes. Piotr Kusz, maybe a comment on the joint planning and scenarios going forward, combining electricity, gas, and hydrogen. The Commission seems to, want something to be improved or pursued there. What is your take on this, and how do you see this taking shape?
Maybe first comments, Frederick, to your statement. We see how the proposal is going, and we see more and more integration in the proposals of the Commission, especially now with these legislative proposals for the national level, where now the national scenarios will go all along the value chain of our business, but also be more and more interlinked with electricity. On the joint scenarios, I can only repeat that we work on a number of iterations with TUA and DP. We have already 10 years experience in providing for very robust analysis of European networks, and also with our cooperation. It's very important to add that these are really jointly developed scenarios, and the interlink model has already 6 years, and there is a lot of really detailed work between both organizations. And we see this joint exercise as really a quintessence of this energy system integration. We see that our analysis provide really checked and very expert vision of how the system will evolve and what is needed for infrastructure.
Thanks, Piotr Cruz. Let me turn to Rafael Anoto now. Your views briefly about the joint scenarios. Do you think something there needs to be changed or improved?
Yes, thank you, Frédéric. Indeed, we were very happy when seeing this joint scenario initiative in the gas package. It's very good, but of course it can always be improved. First of all, taking into account the energy efficiency first principle is something that is absolutely needed, but also making sure that the joint scenarios are aligned with climate targets is also something that is not where guidance is not strong enough there, because what we need is really science-based decision-making and science-based modeling when talking about joint scenarios. And of course, when we talk about the future of hydrogen, the electricity network planning is as important for the future of the hydrogen system as is the gas network planning. So joint scenarios are absolutely needed, but the contribution, especially from ENNOH, should be also for the future of the hydrogen network, is also to prepare plans on what networks will be available to be either taken off the gas system or to be fully repurposed or decommissioned. And this is also something that needs to be taken into account when we talk about joint scenarios, and that we're not seeing enough yet in the package.
Thanks, Rafael Anoto. So let me turn now to Katerina Sikov-Magny, maybe for a comment on the joint scenarios, and then I'll turn to you, Jerzy Buzek.
Thanks. So on joint scenarios, I mean, that work has already started under the Trans-European Energy Networks Regulation. So what the current package brings there is to complement it also by bringing the national planning and the national integrated planning into the focus, and then also focusing on hydrogen more. So we already have experience of joint scenarios which are climate compliant, and this we need to pursue and bring all the science, bring all the stakeholders into the process. But just one comment here. I mean, of course, we need to be efficient. We need to keep in mind that resources are very limited. We need to keep in mind affordability, but at the same time, we also need to keep in mind that security of supply and the resilience of our system, be it then electricity or the future decarbonized gas, means also redundancy in the system. If we put every line 100% into usage, and then there is a problem, then we have a big problem as well. So being too efficient is also risky. So that's one point I wanted to raise as a citizen as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Sikov-Magny. And Jerzy Buzek, you wanted to comment maybe on the joint scenarios?
Yeah, as it is usual in our integrated energy market, will be very important cross-border hydrogen network. It will be certainly key for developing a hydrogen economy because in natural way, hydrogen production will likely be focused on specific regions. In the case of green hydrogen, this will be geographically close to wind or solar energy, maybe hydropower sometime. As with renewable electricity, this poses a logistical challenge of transporting the energy from a remote production site to consumers across Europe. So ENNOH will be very much involved in our energy security as usual, and ENNOH is absolutely crucial from this point of view. Only via cross-border hydrogen network, all member states can benefit from access to the hydrogen market. And this infrastructure will ensure security of supply and market functioning. The creation of an EU-wide hydrogen network under regulated network access will provide the best conditions for the development of the hydrogen market. So third-party access, for example, and everything what we've got just now in our SOS regulation, it will be valid in some way also in the future, thanks to cross-border hydrogen network. So if we think of integration of our European energy market, is absolutely necessary to think on that also from the point of view of hydrogen generation or production or hydrogen transmission.
Thanks, Jerzy Buzek. Let me maybe stay with you for a moment. I see Piotr Kusz has his hands up. Yes, go ahead, Piotr.
Maybe to comment more on this integrated scenarios, we've also respect to what was said before and repeat a bit that security of supply aspects, energy system integration aspect, integrating all three columns of energy, so electricity, gas, and hydrogen, is of utmost importance in this integrated system plan and having a long-term vision. And here I would like to also refer a bit to this practical reading of the package. What we see now is also the proposals are now going a bit against this approach. If we read now dedicated hydrogen TYNDP, which as we read the package should take place already in very few years. So I would be very also cautious here with these proposals, not to lose this aspect of really having an integrated look, as it was said here by various speakers, that we really have to look at which assets can be repurposed, how the assets can work together to provide for smooth, efficient transition towards hydrogen. And our worry here is that if we now install a really separate exercise, which will be somehow made a bit detached of broader energy system integration look in Europe, might pose some difficulties in practical ramping up the hydrogen networks in Europe.
Thanks, Piotr Kusz. And actually that introduces the next question I wanted to put on the table. So when the Commission presented the December gas package, it said a key element was to establish a competitive hydrogen market with a dedicated infrastructure. And I guess dedicated infrastructure is the key term here. So Jerzy Buzek, maybe you can tell us a bit more about your views when it comes to creating a dedicated hydrogen network. What, in your view, is the best way to get there? And do you agree that a dedicated network needs to be established in the first place?
Yeah. First of all, let me say, hydrogen transmission infrastructure will be naturally monopolistic. This is the case today with gas and electricity transmission infrastructure. Hydrogen transmission infrastructure will be absolutely monopolistic at the beginning. On the other hand, therefore, the regulation of hydrogen infrastructure should be based on the guiding principles laid down in our third energy package, as it is in the case of electricity or natural gas infrastructure. This includes such fundamental concepts as third-party access or an unbundling, of course, together with of course, transparent tariffs. So it's important that we will build our cross-border hydrogen networks and also to use all the rules in our third energy package. And maybe it is necessary to add that both green and blue hydrogen will play a role. We should not just say that one of them is more important, because it's unclear for our producers, for our generation. As recognized by the European Commission in its hydrogen strategy, both of them and hydrogen infrastructure for green or blue hydrogen can contribute to the developing hydrogen market. We have to take it into account in transport infrastructure, infrastructure planning, and we've got also quite a new regulations from the European Commission and saying that gas and nuclear energy, they are for transition absolutely necessary. In taxonomy, I hope it will be absolutely clear for us that for period, let's say 25, 30 years, natural gas and nuclear energy will be valid as a very good way for transmission. And from this point of view, hydrogen is crucial in the long-term perspective. So, of course, we need a lot of infrastructure, and we should build it as soon as possible and to start to do that.
Thanks, Mr. Buzek. Let me turn to Raphaël Hanotaux now about this question of infrastructure and the European Commission's objective to create a dedicated hydrogen infrastructure. What is your view about this?
Yes, so about dedicated infrastructure, what's very clear is that at the moment we're not really sure if we will actually need a pan-European hydrogen infrastructure, or if we will develop actually hydrogen around hydrogen clusters to respond to the needs of heavy industry, where we would not need to transport hydrogen over very long distance, but rather have it on a clustered approach. The big question here is who actually is going to take that decision of how we build and what do we need to build. At the moment, we see that we have the ENNOH, and we have this energy system integration that should enable a bit of joint scenarios and actually making sure that we take the decision in a independent manner, or at least not responding to some interest. But what we have seen and what Mr. Buzek was saying is very interesting. We need to actually have this gas package in line with the third energy package, with the unbundling regulation, with the unbundling provisions, with third-party access. And at the moment, we see that these elements are mentioned in the gas package, but at the same time, you see a lot of exemptions, and member states will be able to ask for exemptions about these, for example, unbundling provision for the better part of this decade. So the big question is really who takes that decision and how we take the decision in terms of building this hydrogen infrastructure, because of course, and Ms. Sikov-Magny also said that we need a certain degree of redundancy of infrastructure. At the same time, overbuilding will lead to stranded assets and will lead to an overpriced bill for consumers and for Europe in general.
Thanks, Rafael and Otto. Let me ask the same question now to Alan Cruz. Do you believe there is a need for a dedicated hydrogen infrastructure, and how do you think policymakers should take this forward?
If I look to this question, it's indeed a very interesting one. But I do believe that hydrogen should become a kind of a commodity product. Given that we kind of already agreed that we cannot electrify everything, so there are sectors or usages that, let's say, are not either feasible or economically feasible. So from that perspective, you're trying to look at how to make sure that within Europe, everybody can make use of this new product. And therefore, a commodity product is, let's say, most likely. And then the question is a bit, if you look at, do you want to transport it and to make it a pan-European grid? It depends a bit, where do you think the hydrogen is being produced? And from import, because we still import quite a lot of energy in Europe, from import, you will always look at the outsides of Europe, whether they're from harbors or pipelines from the outside. And you want to be able to transport the hydrogen towards the inside Europe. And if you want to create hydrogen, you can either use the existing gas, like Jerzy mentioned with blue hydrogen, that could be a possibility. But green hydrogen most likely is being produced near the coast because we're going to use the offshore wind access there. So from that perspective, I think, we might start with, let's say, some clusters. But given the fact that storing CO2 is also a transition part, at least that's the way we feel about it, building it out to a pan-European grid, I think in the end is something that we should work on.
Okay, thanks, Alan Cruz. Let me ask now Piotr Kusz what your views are about this idea planned by the European Commission to create a dedicated hydrogen infrastructure. We heard some of the other speakers mention regulatory issues that the third energy package should apply, including, for example, the unbundling rules. What are your views on that?
Well, I also have a more infrastructure-oriented look at this part of the discussion. I will also refer to the fact that, as we said, we already started as TSOs work with hydrogen in various areas, starting from technical issues, hydrogen handling, that will be also very important to provide for robust infrastructure. And indeed, currently, we see multiple visions of how the infrastructure can develop around different applications, so regionally or in also aspect of pan-European needs for infrastructure, as was rightly mentioned here. There is also a lot of discussion if and how in future hydrogen might be imported to Europe. What way we'll also refer to is very important for us to know what are the needs of market participants and the needs along whole value chain, and this is why we are also engaging very strongly with various stakeholders. First with our process for ENNOH Roadmap 2050. Then, of course, it's very important to mention that we are also very active in European Clean Hydrogen Alliance, that we are also discussing the various projects and barriers to the projects for hydrogen infrastructure, be that transportation, distribution, be that also ports and inland terminals. And here we look at what is the potential to develop such projects in different regions and also having this wider view. And finally, what is also very important for ENNOH is also to have a better understanding of the evolution of the market and the needs of various actors along the whole value chain. So also we work with them with our advisory panel for the future of gas grids, where we really collect and look how what are the important vectors to develop and where to develop the infrastructure.
Thanks, Piotrkus. Let me turn back to Katerina Sikov-Magny now, maybe for a sort of a wrap-up or a summary of the Commission's approach when it comes to developing a dedicated hydrogen network. We heard some of the speakers say that this requires an approach, also regulatory speaking, applying the third energy package, unbundling rules, etc. So can you expand a little bit on how you intend to approach those kinds of regulatory matters?
Thanks. So first of all, I think the question on whether we need a dedicated hydrogen network, I mean, my answer is yes. If we want hydrogen to play the role in decarbonizing the gas system, we will need one day a dedicated network that spans beyond national borders. Otherwise, hydrogen usage will then stay only local, maybe then be blended, and all these aspects we believe are not the right ones to decarbonize the gas sector. But what we have now put in place in the package is that, of course, we are speaking about an emerging sector where there is still a lot of uncertainty, where the costs still need to come down so as to be competitive. And that's why what we have put in place in the proposal is the model, the target model, if you wish, where we want to be in a decade, let's say. And therefore, we are in a very slow moving sector. Infrastructure typically takes between 5 to 10 years to build. So therefore, we have allowed many flexibilities for member states to decide in this emerging phase. And that is in order to trigger and incentivize the sector. But everybody in the sector knows where we want to be when the cross-border infrastructure starts emerging. And that we have assumed that will happen around 2030 and after. And here, the rules, Mr. Buzek mentioned that the grid is a natural monopoly, and that is exactly the case. And therefore, we need to ensure that there is no monopoly power, so strong regulation on the grid, and also ensuring access by any party to the grid so that they can put their hydrogen into it and trade, rules on tariffication, etc., etc. So the same approach we have in place already in the electricity and gas sector. All this, of course, needs to evolve in a cooperation, in an integrated way, as we have discussed earlier today. And that's where both the electricity and gas stakeholders and players need to be an inherent part of the development of the hydrogen future as any other stakeholder. So the answer is yes, we need to know where we want to be and then allow the flexibility in the ramp-up phase in the sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Sikov-Magny. And so now we can go maybe a little bit deeper into the European Commission proposals when it comes to regulating these new dedicated networks. So the Commission proposal was to establish a European network of network operators for hydrogen, so ENNOH, which is supposed to start operating as of 2024. It seems there are quite a lot of open questions still about this new body and how it will work. So we'll start collecting questions from the speakers, questions or comments, and then we'll return to you, Mrs. Sikov-Magny, to maybe provide clarification. So let me start with Piotrkus from ENNOH. What are your views about this new body called ENNOH? What are the open questions there as far as you're concerned?
Yeah, thank you very much for this question. I think that our answer goes also a bit in line of energy system integration, and we are also trying to understand a bit the concept of having a new separate body for hydrogen when discussing the system integration and interdependence between all these three energy carriers. Nevertheless, as we said, there are many open practical questions, and we really want to be constructive and, as we said, get engaged into the dialogue on how this core governance approach should be taken forward. From our views, yes, it's indeed a very ambitious deadline to set up an organization only in 2024, having in mind that hydrogen market is in very nascent stage currently, and we don't see at this moment cross-border or wider infrastructure that will then transport hydrogen. So of course this is something of a challenge to set up already organization that is up and running. Secondly, as I mentioned before, then of course it poses another question: how to develop then this pan-European hydrogen TYNDP and how to integrate it with the existing plans that are carried out by ENNOH and ENNSOG. And finally, we are also looking at how practically will look the membership in such an organizations. Do we expect that in already 2 years from now we will have certified operators for network and for hydrogen networks, and how they will be designated? And then of course should we be open also, if we look at this approach to regulate the future hydrogen market, will be also open to other parties, like, I don't know, producers or on downstream side. So I think there remains a lot of open questions on how to handle this process of establishing such a dedicated organization for hydrogen for now.
Thanks, Piotr Kusz. Alan Kroes, maybe we can get your views about how do you think ENNOH should be established going forward, and what you think should be its remit. What are the open questions that you have regarding this new body?
Yeah, an interesting question. I mean, not knowing exactly how ENNOH will work and who's picking up, it's, let's say, we're working from assumptions. And there you have kind of two approaches. So either you like what you already have, because then you know how to deal, the processes are there, you know the people picking things up. But on the other hand, we've also learned during the whole scenario building process, for example, how to introduce more and more the DSOs, how to introduce the power to heat sector. So this decarbonization target also means that we need to change our current way of behaving, introduce new stakeholders, and be able to manage that. So from that perspective, ENNSOE is a bit neutral on this one, and we can work with both systems. So we'll make it work, left or right, no problem there.
Okay, thanks, Alan Kroes. Same question now to Raphaël Hanotaux. Some questions maybe that you have or remarks regarding ENNOH?
Yes, absolutely. So on the ENNOH and the governance of these bodies and the interplay between ENNSOE, ENNSOG, and ENNOH, what we see is that, of course, it's not realistic to ask the European Commission to develop the target model of 2030 from the outset. But the exemption that exists on unbundling, for example, raise a lot of questions on how to avoid that we have ENNSOG, for example, that will be taking the duty of ENNOH until 2024, actually doing that on their own interest, because gas TSOs have an interest in using their networks and avoiding stranded assets. So how do we have the necessary guarantees of legal separation and unbundling up until that moment? And how do we actually ensure that there is a balance between ENNSOE, ENNSOG, and ENNOH? Because this is also what the 10E regulation governance revolves around. So if ENNOH is not independent from other agents, how do we reach that balance, and how do we assure to avoid vested interests in there?
Thanks, Raphaël Hanotaux. Jerzy Buzek, maybe your views about this new body called ENNOH. What should be the principles there you think should guide the operation of this new governance body?
Well, it's an important question, and we think about it in a deep and serious way. How to organize ourselves. I may say, from my perspective, that we created ENNOH and ENNOH 12 years ago, and developing hydrogen economy. Let's first and foremost use the experience and potential existing processes as well as infrastructure synergies interlinking gas and electricity system. And let me add that, as a matter of fact, in infrastructure, if we think on infrastructure dedicated to hydrogen, what is the key? Around 70% of this network will be composed of repurposed gas infrastructure, since it has been proven more economical than new infrastructure construction. So if we've got demand something about 10,000 kilometers in next 10 years, in 20 years, 3 or 4 times more, we should remember what is the cheapest way of building a new infrastructure. The scale of this undertaking demands that hydrogen infrastructure planning be conducted in the most efficient manner possible and make the most possible use of synergies between electricity and gas. So infrastructure planning has to take into account various stakeholders, but the final decisions will always be with member states' national plans, since it will probably look different in different countries. The role of the EU will be to take into account both front runners and laggards as well. And it could be from country to country different situation. And I think that experience of ENNOH, ENNOH, how to connect our European market, how to make it working in in most efficient way and giving energy security is absolutely crucial from my point of view. So we will see the final result of our discussion. I am open for everything, but I like everything what has happened in the last 12 years, thanks to ENNOH and ENNOH.
Thanks, Mr. Buzik. So let me turn back now to Katerina Sikov-Magny, maybe for a reaction to what we just heard, the questions and remarks regarding ENNOH. So, for example, questions about the membership, who would be the members, would DSOs, for example, participate as well, and how do you ensure as well the independence? That was something that was raised by Raphaël Hanoto.
Thanks. I mean, maybe just first to underline that the hydrogen market is expected to differ from the current gas market and, of course, electricity as well, because the future role for hydrogen are different, and therefore the future rules for hydrogen also need a dedicated reflection by those who are then part of this development and have then the technological knowledge. So the exclusive focus on hydrogen through ENNOH allows to better tailor the development of these networks to the real needs of the market. And when we speak about networks, we must keep in mind that it is not only the physical network as such, but it is also all the rules, connection codes, net and access codes, and all these what we call as network codes that need to be developed and need to be then specific for hydrogen needs and uses and the type of gas that it is. So, of course, the opportunities of repurposing the natural gas are enormous, and that's why I've underlined the need to work together, then be it hydrogen interest, be it gas interest, be it electricity interest, or broader societal interest that then reflect decarbonization targets perhaps in a different way. So if still speaking about the differences, large industrial players and major transport hubs will be the main consumers for hydrogen, at least in the next decades to come, whilst natural gas is delivered to hundreds of millions of households, businesses, and electricity and heat producers that use gas. So there is a big difference already in this sense. And hydrogen is not, therefore, interchangeable with natural gas because it will serve different purposes and target the so-called hard-to-abate sectors. So that is why we have proposed setting up this new entity in line with ENNOH and ENNOH, so learning from all the good experience we have seen there in the past decade, as Mr. Buzek rightly said. However, creating a new entity, of course, always takes time. And that is why in the beginning, we propose to set up something which is called a European platform to support this early work in scoping hydrogen issues with broad stakeholder participation. In the early years, again, ENNOH will remain responsible for the tasks under the 10-year regulation, gas directive and gas regulation, until the new rules come into place. So on the one hand, with the creation of the ENNOH, we have foreseen the very specific needs of the sector and the very targeted needs of the sector. The independence then is essential. But again, as I've said many times, we need the ramp-up phase. We need to be sure that we can already start working today with what we have, working with all the parties concerned in establishing the ENNOH in a couple of years' time to follow. Thank you.
Thanks, Mrs. Sikov-Magni. Maybe a brief follow-up question for you, Mrs. Sikov-Magni. I mean, there are some worries I hear about the creation of this new dedicated network with its own governance body and technical rules like network codes that you mentioned. I mean, all of that takes time to put in place. And some are worried that this might be like erecting some new walls between different energy sectors when the Commission is trying to build bridges. What is your answer to that?
That's funny. Why doesn't anybody propose to merge ENNOH and G? You know, the same question arises there as well, in my view. There are specificities, be it technical, be it in terms of the users, be it in terms of the location of the production, etc. And these specificities, in our view, can best be tackled by giving that task to those who are experts in the area. But again, having said this, it is essential that nobody in today's world can and should work alone, because then all the benefits from synergies, all the benefits from system integration, and then economic efficiency would be lost. So specialization where it makes sense, and then strong cooperation. And we believe that we have put these elements into the package. And here I do trust that the cooperation comes from all the partners who are here today and many more as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Mrs. Sikov-Magni. We're getting close to the end of this event. I'm just picking up one question now from the audience, which is coming actually from the European Commission itself and is for you, Mrs. Sikov-Magni. So it's somebody called Thomas Rambaud who works at DG Research, and he's asking what are the main barriers that we should tackle in 2022 for the production of clean or green hydrogen?
Main barriers to this year. I mean, this year should be focused on getting the Fit for 55 package and the December package on gases advanced as much as possible, if not concluded in the institutional negotiations. We are very advanced already on the renewables directive, for instance, where we hope to go into the trialogues already in the autumn. And that is the renewables directive is essential also to create the demand, the targets, and rules for getting renewable hydrogen into the market. The December package then brings in the similar approach for low carbon hydrogen. So that's why it is also important to rapidly advance on the negotiations. So I think the first element to put in place is to have a speedy negotiation with the European Parliament and with the Council on all these proposals, because they form a whole together. Then, of course, on the technology side, on the project side, all the work that is already going on in collecting ideas from the sector on which projects to produce hydrogen, in which form, what kind of hydrogen, etc. We need to monitor this closely and work together in order to help those projects to go forward. And that is very much what is ongoing today with colleagues in the lead from DG GROW, for instance. And thirdly, of course, there is still a lot of work to bring down the cost of hydrogen, especially the cost of green and low carbon hydrogen. And that is where, on the one hand, the ramping up of the production can help, but here research into making the technology more efficient, making the technologies that we have more market ready will of course play also a key role. And here the research programs which already have a strong element on hydrogen is a key element again here to remove the obstacles that we have still at the cost side. So that not exhaustively, but as a rapid reaction to the question.
Thanks, Mrs. Sikov-Magni. And indeed, now we've reached the end of this conference. But before we close, I will ask each of our speakers to very briefly, in 1 or 2 sentences, summarize what would be your main message from this conference or concluding words. So let me start with you, Jerzy Buzek.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a great discussion. So let us say that all electric scenario is not an option. So we should always remember about that, because in heavy transport or steel industry, of course, we need hydrogen, and it will be also in longer perspective. So if we want, because our main topics and main problems are integrated scenario, smooth transition. So let us take into account all the options, not to be closed for any solution. And it is my point of view, knowing that we've got a lot of experience, thanks to ENNOH and ENNOH, we should use them in the future. Clear regulatory framework to support technologies deployment, but also ensure security of supply and to avoid monopolies is absolutely crucial from point of view of everything what we will do in the future with our gas package, so important from the point of Fit for 55. Even if the gas package is not named as Fit for 55
scenario. I think it is absolutely crucial point in our scenario, gas package together with Fit for 55.
Thanks, Mr. Buzek. And so let me turn now to Raphaël Hanotaux, your brief concluding words, very quickly, if possible.
Yes, thank you, Frédéric. So to conclude, I would just like to say that the EU has a leadership role in pushing an ambitious energy and climate legislation and in showing that this transition is possible. The European Green Deal is under scrutiny from other parts of the world, and the EU could really show the way on how to ensure a managed phase out of the gas sector that is also affordable to consumers. So if it gives gas TSOs an overinflated role in building the hydrogen network and makes consumer pay for hydrogen even if they do not benefit from it, then it will miss the opportunity of ensuring this affordable, clean, and especially smooth transition. So it can be really a trailblazer and a front runner in that aspect, or it can also go through a messy transition. What is now important is that it's now up to member states and the parliament to actually deliver that and actually deliver an ambitious Green Deal, because all will hinge on this package and on this legislation.
Thanks, Raphaël Hanotaux. Alan Kroes, your concluding thoughts briefly.
Yeah, thank you. I think indeed the energy transition is a complex and a multidimensional challenge for us. So we should not oversimplify things. I also very much like that Katerina indeed also mentioned security, supply, and adequacy are important items. But we should also not be afraid to change. So let's say in the past we have shown that we can change and pick up things, being resilient and innovative and flexible in this matter. As long as indeed we want to be, let's say, doing this in an integrated way and cooperating with all the important stakeholders there. So looking forward.
Thanks, Alan Kroes. Piotr Kurs, your own concluding thoughts very briefly, please.
Thank you very much, Frédéric. As ENNOH, we are really willing and ready to take part and support the works around the package. As TSOs, we are offering our experience and we offer our infrastructure that will be important to develop hydrogen economy in an affordable and secure manner to all the market participants. And we are, as fair partner and advisor, we are really open to talk with all the stakeholders and to provide our support in this process towards decarbonizing EU energy market and our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to close the round of closing statements, Mrs. Katerina Sukov-Magny.
Thanks for the very interesting discussion, first of all. So just a couple of words then. Well, we will need molecules in the future decarbonized energy system. That is evident in all our scenarios. And that's why we also will need the gas sector in the future. The question is, what gas? And this gas, of course, must be decarbonized. It must be renewable gases. And here, hydrogen is expected to play a key role. So what we need to do in order to get this gas decarbonized and get the fossil elements out, we need the regulatory framework in place that incentivizes the right decisions. And here, as has been emphasized already, is the full Fit for 55 package that was tabled last summer, complemented by this December package that goes into more detail in the renewable and low carbon gases. So we need that into place. And after that, it will be for the private sector and for the market to make the change, bring the new ideas, bring the new technologies, and to bring costs down. Thank you.
Thanks, Katerina. So that brings us to the end of this event. A big thanks to ENNOH for supporting it. A big thanks to our speakers for your time and to our viewers for following us. If you've missed the beginning of this event, you can watch it back on YouTube and other social platforms. And if you would like to know more about upcoming events at Euractiv, you can check our website, events.euractiv.com, for more. We hope to see you again soon. In the meantime, take care and stay safe. Bye for now.